Fiji has a number of regulations and legislations that help us with the issue of waste management. We have our parent act, which is our Environmental Management Act, as well as our latest Act 2008. Under this act, we have subsidiary legislation, but what we are focusing on is how do we control the movement of waste within the country. And so we are looking at developing a container deposits regulation that will look at the full life cycle of plastic from entering into our country to when it ends up in our landfills.
Considering the multifaceted, complex, transboundary nature, we really need a strong and ambitious treaty that addresses upstream measures, including addressing unsustainable production and consumption of plastics. Because we do believe that's an enabler of all the provisions as we move down to the treaty text. But it's also crucial for us to allow us to transition to an economy that moves away from avoidable, problematic, and unessential plastics.
The reason why trade has entered into the plastic space is because we import majority of our plastics into the country. And so we have joined the dialogue on plastic pollution that was initiated in November of 2020 under WTO. And Fiji is a proponent of this dialogue.
Countries like Fiji or other Pacific island states have a large potential for marine-based substitutes to produce materials that can replace plastics. For example, silicates, seaweeds, or even crustacean shells.
As more and more Pacific Island countries start phasing out single-use plastics, the substitutes that replace the single-use plastics are going to become more and more important. However, the additives and emulsifiers and a range of other chemicals that are used to give single-use plastics their properties are still being used in the substitutes. So it's very important to have universal and standard minimum design standards that the Pacific as a region could adopt to ensure that once these substitutes enter the compostable waste stream, get composted and enter our soils, they do not cause further harm.
And ensure that we're controlling and regulating flows of plastics into, for example, the Pacific Island region through, I think, prioritising the essential use concept first. Is it essential? If it's not, then those will be first off the rank.
One of the areas that has been a major concern is biodegradable plastics seem to be claimed, but sometimes they are not fully biodegradable. So these materials come in for our polymer testing lab, and we provide them with the accurate data, and for the government or the agencies to make sound and correct decisions.
So how do we address the systems change that's needed to deal with the plastic pollution? We have to address it at the production phase, at the intermediate phase in the value chain, and at the final phase of waste. So all of these levels have to be addressed, and in a way, a transition that is just and that is fair. So for that, we need money. We need finance on a massive scale, finance that is patient and catalytic, provided for the long term and at accessible prices.
So we have a lot of events, and in addition to that, 40% of Fiji's GDP comes from tourism. So the MICE segment, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, and events, is an extremely huge segment in which we consume a lot of plastic, often unnecessary and very preventable. And UNDP in this case has kickstarted an initiative around sustainable merchandise. As part of that initiative, we are identifying local creatives who are using natural resources, natural fibers as a way to substitute plastics, and at the same point of time be able to work with the young people and women creatives of Fiji to be able to build their capacity to be able to do this at scale.
Pathways has already been used in a number of locations, in Pune, India on a city level, and in South Africa on a national level. And in both areas, the tool corresponded to local contexts and local needs. And similarly in Fiji, the same thing can be applied. We can look at Fiji's context and consider the fact that, for example, plastic production is low to non-existent. So in this case, we would need to focus perhaps on management, for example. And Pathways is a tool that can account for that and allow complete customization and flexibility.